you are, you really know what you are getting. You are putting in the effort, and there is change. I was moved from different plants. I was moved from Obuase to Eduaprem to Bogoso. All that I needed to do was to be agile. And let me be honest with you. If you are going to be employed 6 months into your service, you know. I'm being honest with you. 6 months into your service, you know it yourself because you know the effort you are putting in. And building a career, one thing that I would want us to know is that it is not just a job, but there's an aspect of passion. I never really saw the importance of what I was doing until I started to work. And I never treated the job that I was doing as if I was just doing national service. I gave my all like I was working like an employee. I didn't do 9 to 5. I used to go to work like 5 and close at 10 p.m. That is how long we used to work there. Because it's a mine, AGA mine. My colleagues will close like 5. When it's 5, everyone is rushing. But I made it a point that the opportunity I've been given, I am not going to let it go like that. Because there are times that people give us certain opportunities, especially my boss, wherever he is, I thank him so much. I just decided not to let them down. Because my skill into being who I am today was just one opportunity. It was just a simple training section. Everyone knew that, oh, this guy is doing well. And I was given an opportunity to train the operations head, the MD, someone after school, national service, what do I know? On certain standard requirements, but I was prepared. That is the honest truth. So when they gave me the nod right after, I knew I had done a good job. 2, I'll speak about 3 things, and I want you to take it as we are building our career. I'll speak about time, I'll speak about the mind, and I'll speak about the power of relationship as you are going on to build career. I think when it comes to relationship, I've spoken about networking. So there are 7 universal currencies. Moses, my friend, always tells me this. 7 universal currencies. This is made to everyone. It's given to everyone, but it depends on how you, the individual, you use it. So these 7 universal currencies, everyone has it. So let's take time. The unit of life is time. When someone passes away, we ask, how old was the person? Because it is time that defines life. And how you use it is what is the most important. Because we have the option to design our life. We are where we are today because of the decisions we made tomorrow. It is something that always we say, but it is so true. You decided to be here this morning because it was a decision you made some weeks ago, some days ago, or even this morning. So it is about the decisions we make day in, day out that tells us where we are going. And if you agree with that, Moses always says this thing, and I love it so much. He's one of my mentors. He says that the age 0 to 25 is your morning years. Morning years. 0 to 25. So 0 to 25, all you are doing is you are learning to know who you are. You go to school, you try to get knowledge, you seek knowledge, which is very important. 0 to 25. 26 to 50 is your afternoon season of your life. And that is where you build. That is where you build. Then from 60 to 65, 50 to 65, or 51 to 65 is your evening season. That is where you establish what you've built. Building is different from establishment. And after 65 to your 70 years, these are the years you call your legacy years. We have Captain among us. Captain, I salute you. Captain just turned 71 years, and he's in his legacy years. Let's give it up to Captain. Captain is going to share a lot of dumbfounding thoughts with us this morning. And I would love us to listen to him well and ask important questions. Because if we have such people who have been able to go through the daunting heights, scale through daunting heights, and open businesses to recruit a lot of people, we shouldn't take it less of an opportunity. That is time. So it is arranged. You have your morning season, your afternoon season, your evening season, and your night season. That is your legacy years. When you know, it is not that you may be too late. when you find yourself at 26 or 27, still in the university, you are not late. But when you are being chased by a cat, and when you are being chased by a lion, you know how you run. So when you are 27, 28, 30, and you are still in the university, the determination with which you hit things would be different because it is never the same. Sometimes we always say that, yes, God has plans for us. God blesses men through men. But it takes our effort to make things happen. Talk about the next universal currency, the power of the mind. In Chi, we say this thing, and it's so important because this is the best gift God gave to us. After life is your mind. And we have the power to control what gets in there and what comes out. And if you learn to understand how the mind operates, it becomes very useful to you yourself. Because the mind is such powerful that everything you see around is created twice. Even God created man twice. Bible says that in Genesis 1, he created man. In Genesis 2, he formed man. Just like the law of attraction. If you start to envision something, if it is this particular car you want to buy, give yourself some weeks, start to think about it. You start to see the car more times. By the time you realize, you get it. That is how the mind works. It is so powerful. And I would love to share the story that what you don't know is darker than the night, so seek knowledge. Be a vociferous reader, seek knowledge, ask questions. Even when you're even given a job in your career, ask questions. Because sometimes the reason why we can't give our best is because sometimes we fail to question. And when I met my boss, when I was doing service, in my department, it was huge. A lot of people, he's a big man, chopping thousands of dollars. Big man. Everyone will fail to ask questions. But me, I'll ask questions. Because I don't want to fail you with the results you're expecting from me. So I want clarity. And until you ask, you never get clarity. So never cease to ask questions. I'll share a story I once heard about a man in Inchi. His son passed away at a sea, or let me say at a river nearby. So every morning, the man would go and sit by the river and cry. He did that for some years. And he became used to the river that he started to tell people around the community that I can walk on this river. Everyone doubted him. It is a real life story. People doubted him. He said, me, I can walk on this river. People started to say that, oh, nebane wunintina afanitrim. The man kept on saying, I can walk on this. So during one of the deba, the chief said that every day you complain, you talk. You talk too much. You can walk on this river. Today, walk and let's see. And truth to be told, the man walked on the river. You can ask yourself how. He didn't even go far. Just he walked. And people started to question. So a friend of mine who actually told me the story that he decided to follow up on the man and ask how he did it and what is he God? He said that the difference is ignorance. In the river nearby, there are stones inside. One thing that he did was anytime he went there to mourn his son, he would just try and enter. So his legs will be hitting the stones. So he decided that he will map the way around so that he can at least try and see how best he walk on it. Right now, he's now the village hero, local champion, not knowing that people have stayed in the village, people have been in the village, but at the end of the day, they never knew that they could also walk in the river. What you don't know is darker than the night. If you don't know, ask it. If you don't know, question. The powerful question you can ever ask is why? So whilst you're on your job, whilst you want to build a career, even when you want to even ask yourself questions, which I feel you should do at times, ask yourself why and write them down. The third thing that I'll speak about is relationships. Not erotic ones, but quality relationships. People you can fall on. I can look here and I've seen people who have really helped me right amongst us at points in time. Build relationships. I'm so big on this. Really build relationships. Because you go to a place, when I started working, the people everywhere I go, the people you least expect I should communicate with are the people I communicated with. When I became CISA president, the first people I spoke to were the security men. That's what they told me. And they gave me antecedents of people who became president and never graduated. They gave me. Who even expects that from a security man? My provost would never tell me that. When I started working, I spoke to the cleaners. I spoke to the janitors. I spoke to the people who we call casuals. So in the mine, we have people we call casuals. They are not full-time workers, but they have been in the mine for a long time. Because of education qualification, they have not been fully employed, but they are paid allowances. But they've been there. So mistake we make is when we start to work, the people we least respect are those people because we feel that, what do they have to offer? And they are the people who can show you the way. I would say in today's language, I'm going to plug no. They are the people you should speak to. And aside that, your friends, value friendship. And it shouldn't be always taken, it should be given. Value friendship. When you come to settings like this, build contacts. And don't be shy. Right after here, if you want to speak to Captain, get the confidence and go to him. Captain won't chill you. Maybe something he would say will change your life. And one thing that I always do in my career is that I try to live my life through the lenses of others. I don't want to make the mistakes other people made so that I end up like them. But I would love to live my life in the lenses of other people. So as we are designing our life, as you are trying to find passion, as you are trying to find purpose, never give up. Maybe you have not identified what you can offer now. But you keep on keeping on. And what you are doing now, don't see it as it's not what you wanted. Do it and do it to your best of your ability. So, of course, still give your best because you would never know when you would actually need it. I was thrown into a different field altogether as compared to what I studied. And from studies, people who end up doing things they never studied in school are higher than the people who actually study the things that they are doing, actually on field. I was thrown into a different field altogether. I'm an IT guy. I start working and you throw me into health, safety, and environment. To be an officer, how? You know computer science, you won't do biology, you won't do those things. But now, I have passion in that. And that's what I'm reading my MSc in, because I found passion there. And that is how sometimes it works. So until you know the end, don't expect to know the end and give your best from the beginning. Follow the course, give your best, and it will help you identify where you want to be. And finally, they're signaling me that my time is almost over. My last story that I will end with, which I used to share a couple of times whenever I go to classes, is the story of a grandfather and his grandson. The grandfather was very wise. So the grandson would always try to test how wise the grandfather was. So always, questions. Oh, grandfather, this is what I've heard. That is what I've heard. And the grandfather would prove times without number. The guy wasn't satisfied. So one day, he caught a butterfly, placed it into his hands, and stood in front of his grandfather's door. Pam, pam, pam. This man wasn't coming out. The child was relentless, kept knocking over 30 minutes. So the man came out and asked, "Why are you here? What do you request?" And he said, "I want to know the state of the butterfly. Is it dead or is it alive? So if it's dead, then I'll just open my palm and let it fly away to prove to my grandfather that my grandfather is not wise. If it is alive, then I'll just put my hands together and kill it and show it to my grandfather that it is not alive." So one thing that the grandfather said, that the fate and the state of the butterfly rest in your own hands. The fate and state of your destiny rest in your own hands. How you design it is how it's going to become. This may seem like worse, but if you can actually pay attention to the little things, the decision you make now, today, from this moment, tomorrow, there is that likelihood and guarantee that things will work for you. And building your career, one thing you should never stop doing is continue to ask questions and continue to ask the why. Thank you very much. My name is Justice Appiah. It has been awesome speaking with you.
We can do better for Justice Appiah. We can do better. Thank you so much, Justice. Very, very brilliant submission. We actually call him Idolu because he's a man with a lot of ideas, a man with vision and so much to see. Once again, thank you so much. I think we can give him a round of applause. Yeah. Right. So before we zoom straight into action, there's a last conversation that I want us to have, and then it is on globalization. We are talking about fourth revolution, and it's important that as participants and as young people, we understand globalization and how to take advantage of it. Now, to do us the honors, and then also to enlighten us on certain international collaborations and opportunities that are available to us, I have here Master Alexander Labi Ado, who is with Yali, West Africa, and he's in charge of programs and networking. And then he's also a head of state award scheme coordinator, particularly for the KNUST Award Center. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give Master Alexander Labi Ado a round of applause.
Good morning to us all. I would like to greet everyone here. I see my papa is also seated. Papa, I salute you. And I see my senior Master Justice. I think I owe this man, I owe this man a lot because my leadership, my whole leadership process and my whole leadership training started when I was a mentor under him, right back from College of Science. Thank you very much, Master Justice. All right. This morning, I'm here to talk about globalization. And we all know the theme for this program is strategic leadership for African development in the fourth revolution. We can't talk about revolution, we can't talk about development without having to talk about globalization. Often when we hear of globalization, it does sound like it's a new word, like an alien word to us as young leaders, as young African child. That what is globalization? But then I would like to start by saying that when I look at Africa and I look at her in the continent and in the context of her attractiveness, what I can actually explain that to be is globalization. What comes actually in mind is globalization. When we talk of globalization, like I said earlier on, we often think or assume it's something new to us. But Africa was once globalized as a commodity. In the slave market, where we were sold everywhere in the world, that is globalization. We were globalized again through colonization. Then we were globalized again through neo-colonization. And now we are being globalized in the context of opening our markets. Sometimes when I hear the Western world, the Europeans talk about we opening our markets, all in the name of globalization, and they also dictate the rules for us, sometimes I do laugh. Even though I'm a young leader, sometimes I do laugh. Because it's more like a boxing or a boxing match, whereby you can't actually bring a heavyweight champion and a lightweight champion together to fight. That is a joke, or I would say that is murder. Let's imagine a country like the United States of America with a GDP of about 20 to 23 trillion, and a country like Somalia in Africa, where GDP around 400 or 430 million, and countries like this are supposed to actually go into bilateral arrangement with the same rule. Sometimes it's so awful because even a city in the United States, like let's take a city like Los Angeles, has per day can actually generate a revenue which is far more with a GDP, which is even far more than a country like Somalia. So then they ask us to open what? Our markets, or they ask us to open our trades. And what happens? We see our textiles industries are dying. We see our rice industry is dying. Our cocoa industry is dying. We see our poultry industry is dying. Yes, still, they tell us we should open up for globalization. Now, in as much as we are opening up to globalization, they determine the rules for us. This morning, I want to actually talk, or my subject is actually centered around making Africa work again amidst globalization. Because it is something that has actually come to stay with us, whether we like it or yes. And as Africans, as young leaders, we need to reposition ourselves amidst this globalization. So what will it take as Africans? Because we are talking about African sustainability, Africans' development in the fourth revolution. What will it take? Today, I stand here to tell you that it will take a combined effort. And what is this effort that I'm talking about? Strategic leadership. We can't do anything without strategic leadership. We need to strategize ourselves very well. Then, when we talk about leadership too, we can't talk about leadership in Africa, we can't talk about development in Africa without actually having to talk about the youth. Because there is a say that the youth are the future leaders, right? There is a say, we are the future leaders. However, I actually stand to correct that because I want to say that the youth are the leaders of today and tomorrow, which is the future. Because whatever we do today has a replicable effect with tomorrow. So we as young leaders, or we as young people, need to actually positioning ourselves, strategize ourselves very well in amidst this globalization. Kofi Annan once said, any society that refuses to tap into the creativity and the energy of its youth will be lost. And that is true. That is why I'm telling you that you and I have a role to play in this fourth revolution. As young leaders, we need to be prepared enough. And how do we prepare ourselves, or what is actually required of us as young leaders? As young leaders, we need to have the workforce readiness skills. And when I say workforce readiness skills, what do I mean? We need to have the attributes and behavior that our employees will actually look at in hiring us, because we are talking of a revolution. And when we talk of revolution, the fourth revolution, we are talking about energy and tech, the involvement of it. And we need to have these readiness skills to be able to fit in the conversation, fit in. So when I say the workforce readiness skills, what are some of the things that I'm talking about? I'm talking about our creativity. I'm talking about how innovative we are as young people. I'm talking about our critical thinking, how we are able to, our problem-solving oriented nature as young people. But then how do we get to do this? We need to be conscious about having to develop these qualities. Because most of the times, we all go through the education system, and our main focus is just go there, learn whatever you're supposed to learn, and come out with a degree. Am I lying? That is what we actually must actually go to school to actually acquire, just the degree, just the certificate. But we need to go beyond that. We need to develop ourselves as young people, because there is a future ahead of us. There is an Africa that we will inherit from our leaders or from our fathers. And before we can actually inherit this, we need to be ready enough. And how do you get ready? Like I said, we need to be conscious about these things. I, for once, deal with a lot of youth-led organizations, and I can attest to the fact that young leaders like me and you are willing and ready, ever willing and ready to learn something new, to learn to actually achieve our goals. So today, I'm here to tell you or bring to your notice some international opportunities that as young people, you should actually be looking out for. Like the YALI, the Young African Leaders Initiative. What we do at YALI is actually to build leaders, because we believe that Africa can actually be built by Africans, and we are Africans, and we have a mandate, or as young people, we are mandated to actually build Africa the way we want it. So what YALI intends to do is to train the next generational leaders in policy making, in entrepreneurship, and in civil leadership, to actually pick up the mantles, to actually make sure that the development we want as Africa is being driven by us as Africans. Again, we need entrepreneurial skills. When I say entrepreneurial skills, what do I mean? The knowledge and ability that supports success in creating and building workplace opportunities and ideas. These skills include business management, teamwork, leadership skills. Leadership skills, and I highlight, it's not just any leadership skills. We need to be very strategic with our leadership. We really need to be very strategic. We need to be chasing opportunities. One opportunity I can also tell you about is the Duke of Edinburgh International Award Scheme, proud to be the head of state award scheme in Ghana. It's also a scheme that is actually there to actually help young people find their passion, identify their passion. So there are a lot of opportunities out there, a lot of fellowship programs for masters, for PhDs, a lot of tailor-made opportunities program in tech, in media, in politics. I urge all African youth to be very enthusiastic about wanting to build themselves, because until we build ourselves, we can actually not lead the revolution that we actually want to own, or we can actually not develop Africa the way we want to develop it. Like I said earlier, this is Africa, Ghana, and it must be built by Ghanaians and Africans. So this morning, I call on every youth here to have the zeal to execute something that will be real help to Ghana and Africa. There are lots of opportunities, like I said. We need to actually be yearning for it, striving for it. I believe we are not lazy. I heard some time ago, I heard one big man say the youth are lazy. I don't think the youth are lazy. We are ever ready, and I believe that we can actually make the Africa that we want. Thank you very much.
Let's continue to clap for him as he takes his seat. Thank you very much, Master Alex, for the wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where we close the mentorship session. We thank our three speakers for giving us insights on the topics. And like I said, I love what Alex said. He said that justice was his mentor. And so you here can be a mentee to any of them. So I'm entreating you to reach out to them so that they can also mentor you. St. Louis, you are very welcome. Kumaka, you are very welcome. And as you get ready to also enter the university, you can learn a thing or two from these people. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause once again. The program is officially going to start, and I'm going to introduce Master Henry Adams to take over from here. Let's give him a round of applause as he approaches the podium.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, a very good morning to you all. Welcome to the Great Hall of the best university in Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. I thought you put your hands together for that. So today we're gathered here to engage ourselves in a very thought-provoking issue: leadership in Africa, or leadership for African development. And we are privileged to have esteemed guests with various background, various success stories, various challenges, to share their experiences, to tell us about certain strategies they took to get to where they are. Today's events wouldn't be, they will stand here, give their lectures, and then that is it. You're not here to just listen. You're here to actively participate in a conversation that would lead, that will help lead the youth and women particularly in the development of Africa. When it comes to leadership, I think we, in my own perspective, Africa lacks a lot when it comes to generally, not specifically, of course. We have successful leaders like our invited guest, Captain Auntie Charlotte, Dr. Samankra. You're welcome. And we are going to hear their stories today. We're going to share in their experiences. I would urge you to listen, participate, ask, like Justice said, ask very important questions. Ask very important questions, and let's have a wonderful session. So I would like to welcome you once again to the 4th Revolution Leadership Conference, our very first edition here in KNUST. Oh, please put your hands together for that. Now, one of the most important resources in human development is time. I've had presentations from Captain where he stresses on the importance of time management and time use. And so we won't be wasting any time with a lot of gimmicks and skirmishes. We'll be going straight to the point for this event. I wouldn't want to waste any time. I'd invite the partners, the heads of the partners who put together their heads for the organization of this program. The very first is Mr. Isaac Asamoah to give us an insight of what the program is about and then give us his welcome address. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Isaac Asamoah, the head of the Inclab Foundation.
Good morning to everyone. Africa lacks a lot, as our MC said. And I believe you all will agree with me that there's one common enemy that today he will be defeated, since we have our great speakers here. I actually don't believe in just mindset. Africa needs courage. We need to be courageous. And that is the essence of 4th Revolution Leadership Conference. So upon this spirit, together with our corporate partners and our great speakers, and you, the audience, I welcome everybody to Inclab Talk 2023. Thank you.
Because the focus of Inclab and our other partners is on leadership, particularly with the youth, we partnered with the Students Association here on campus. And so I'd also give the head of that Students Association the opportunity to address us briefly before we delve into our lectures. And so it is my privilege, because I have seen this gentleman grow in leadership, just as I've seen some of these gentlemen, Andrew Anoche and Justice. I was actually very, very proud to see Justice up here. Justice, well done. To speak to you guys and now be a mentor himself. It's quite exciting. And so let's put our hands together for the president of GRASAC, the Graduate Students Association of KNUST, Mr. Fred Parker.
Very good morning to us all. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol duly observed. I want to thank you all for honoring our invitation to be here today, to listen to great minds that inspires us. I believe that today you'll be empowered, because the true purpose of leadership is to empower others. Great leaders empower others. Great leaders multiply. So today, I believe that our guests here will empower you so that you'll be able to go out there and then take the world on, so that you bring about change that we all seek to find here within our continent. So I want you to sit down, enjoy the program, pen down your questions, and when it's time to ask questions, let's give our guests thought-provoking questions that will challenge their thoughts, so that they will also give us answers that will help us. When we are out there, we will be able to stand out and stand out tall. I want to thank you very much for honoring our invitation once again, and thanks to the entire team behind the scenes. Splendid performance. We are very grateful for all the tireless efforts and the nights you've spent to make sure this event is a success. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of GRASAC KNUST, I welcome you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. So during the organization of this program, we decided not to limit it to just students in KNUST. We reached out to some senior high schools who have honored our invitation. We reached out to some sister universities within the region. I'm sure they are yet to arrive. But I'd like to introduce some of the student leaders we invited who are currently here. It's my singular honor to introduce the National President of the Graduate Students Association, Thomas Elom. Elom, I can't pronounce your surname. Please give us a wave. He is the head of all graduate students in Ghana. He journeyed through the night to be here. Welcome, Elom. He spoke earlier, but I still want to introduce him. He was the president of the college Students Association for College of Science. Master Justice Apia. Justice, kindly give us a wave. Again, I don't know whether he's here, because I know he's a teacher with St. Louis Senior High School, but I don't know whether he's here in his capacity as a student leader or he's here in his capacity as both. So we'll work with both. Okay, so the former speaker of the Graduate Students Association, KNUST Senate, Right Honorable Emil Ameigo, Mr. Speaker. And then I can see a representative of NUST KNUST here, the Financial Secretary, Robin Pong. Give us a wave. Welcome. I'm introducing these people so that during the course of the program, we'll break briefly where we'll give you the opportunity to networking, and I'm sure our speakers will speak about it as one of the most important things you can do as an individual. Nobody is an island. You might not know when you might need help from someone. Obviously, I believe our speakers got to where they are because they listened. They sought advice from experts, people who have already taken the strides they are taking. They might have their own personal stories about the way their journey went, but at least they had some kind of foresight from reaching out to people. And so I would encourage you, reach out to some of these student leaders, and believe you me, you won't regret it. Okay, so at this point, we wouldn't want to waste much time. I would want to introduce our very first speaker to give us the very first lecture. The speaker is the presidential independence candidate for the Alternative Force for Action, AFA, an investments banker, a global business strategist, and development economist with more than 20 years successful experience in providing physical, strategic, and operational leadership in uniquely challenging situations. He is the CEO and principal partner of AIG Ghana and AIG International, Switzerland, where he champions the development and implementation of the company's long-term strategy. He is also the chairman of Trade and Investment, International Chamber of Commerce, and a director and partner at Caton Capital and RAM Partners Switzerland, both Swiss-based investment firms. He is the vice chairman of the International Chamber of Commerce, Ghana, a senior research fellow for the Institute of Chartered Economists, Ghana. Our first speaker or lecturer will be speaking on the role of leadership in fostering innovation within Africa. I'll be grateful if we could kindly give him a round of applause. Let's just put our hands together. Oh, with a standing ovation for Dr. Sam Anka.
Good morning. I thought Professor Ellis was going to chair the occasion today. So in his absence, I guess I'll leave the chairman out. Am I following the right protocol, or there's somebody standing as a chairman? Not yet. Thank you very much. Distinguished fellow speakers, the great Captain Amwabin and Madam Beatrice, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a proud moment to stand on this platform and share with you my thoughts about leadership. This subject is so dear to my heart. And my presentation will not talk about corporate background or how to be a good leader today, but as the new generation that are looking to come through, who will be taking over the affairs of this nation, I'm going to open your eyes to what leadership has done to our country, our continent, what has drained out of our countries and our continent in Africa because of having the appropriate leadership in the helms of affairs. It only makes sense for all of us gathered here today to equate natural resource potential with national wealth. It makes perfect sense for us to expect our country, and any other country for that matter, to flourish when those nations are blessed with enormous natural resources within their borders. Because if I pick you, any one of you here sitting today, and give you 1 million Ghana cedis right now to use as a seed capital, mathematically, your chances of making it in life is 1 million cedis higher than the one next to you, isn't it? So should everyone gathered here in this room bear witness to me giving you this gift, the seed capital of money, and find you years later that you are at the bottom of the barrel? Should we find you years later not having made anything out of your life, your career? You agree with us all that we'll begin to ask questions, isn't it? What actually happened in the process? And we all know what the answer or the rhetorical question mostly is, don't we? What can cause a person so blessed with the means of making it to find themselves at the end of the day as failures or mediocre at best? It is management, isn't it? Mismanagement, indiscipline, insecurity, laziness, uninventiveness, lack of creativity. You will find that these devious traits are more often than not the causes of the falls from grace to grace. It's said, to whom much is given, much is required. And yet, don't we find people who are constantly given much, but only manage to make little out of it? It is sad when this happens to people or persons, but it's even very tragic when it happens to a company, and more so very pathetic when it's an entire nation. A nation like ours, Ghana. There are main two ingredients that goes into nation building. We have the human resource capital and the natural resource capital. For a country's resource wealth to mean anything at all, it must dedicate a selfless, proactive, and efficient human resource capital at the helm. Let me repeat. For any country to see any sort of meaningful measure, it has to have a dedicated, selfless, proactive, and efficient human resource at the helms of affairs, effectively exploiting these resources to ensure that most of the things are done properly, or we get optimum returns for whatever we invest. Like money in the hands of a reckless individual, a country's natural resource potential is very easily rendered useless in the hands of incompetent human beings when ineffectively exploited. Natural resources are just as worthless as money and when not utilized properly. Because in the end of the day, money is just paper. Well, technically not paper, but linen and cotton blended together. But I'm sure you know what I mean. It is the same for natural resources, that a nation endowed like Ghana's gold, diamond, fossil fuel, iron ore, magnesium, copper, lithium, its forest, all the water bodies, I can go on and on and on. And all these are easily worthless in the hands of incompetent leaders and citizenry alike. Let me just talk about history. Before this country of ours morphed into a sovereign nation under one flag, the economic act of mining in minerals, such as gold, was already happening in our land by our people. When we bring up these topics, they relate to history, and it's so easy for us to think of the theft at the transatlantic slave trade in the 15th century and colonialism in the 18th century. However, those events can no further form the totality of our socio-economic history. I repeat, that is history. When we are talking about the socio-economic records of our country, we still cannot refer our challenges back into colonialism and the thievery during the slave trade. We have moved on from that place. But those events can never be part of it. Way before the Europeans set foot in African soil, there were blossoming trade activity happening in the continent and among our own people. Between our own people and the rest of the world, particularly the rest of the Arab world, far exceeding northern African borders. In fact, some historians assert that the mining activities in the area of land called Ghana dates back from time immemorial, when the ancient Phoenicians of coastal North Africa sailed across the globe, spreading trade and civilization. This present-day land we call Ghana was active participants in the trade, serving a crucial hotspot for trade in the gold. It was the same record of abundance, of flourishing trading activities that brought the European into our soil, beginning the 15th century. The Portuguese, please note, then a very mediocre society of people, in the year 1947, came in contact with our rich land, and their destinies were forever changed for the better, whilst ours was to deteriorate. Because those sooner had the Portuguese set foot on our land, set up forts to establish their trading territories and hopeful monopolies on our soil, then the rest of Europe came trooping in. Trade devolved into theft, trade devolved into slavery, then colonialism. Our natural resources were hauled off in large quantities, day in, day out. So much so that it was getting around the 1550, it was registered that the Portuguese were siphoning about 12,400 ounces of gold from our shores each year. So rich with minerals like gold that when the Portuguese first made contact with us in the 15th century, they called us the mine. A trade between our ancestors and the Europeans regressed into thievery. Our status quo as a repository of gold in the modern world was cemented, and the name Gold Coast was imposed on us by these colonialists, even as they stole from us when we effectively allowed ourselves, because of good leadership, they took advantage of us. But all things must come to an end, and good or bad. And in 1957, our nation gained its freedom and sovereignty. No longer was our nation, our human natural resource capital, to serve the capital of enrichment of underlands. We are now in control of all our affairs. We are now in control of all the amounts that were stolen. We now control everything as a country. Those years when our natural resources, our gold, were stolen from us to enrich other persons and other nations were behind us. Gold Coast, now Ghana, had indeed resisted the oppressor's rule. She is now free for self-rule. Gold Coast, now Ghana, was finally free to create wealth for its people. Its gold belongs to them, and the rest of the abundant natural resources for her land and for her people. The country Ghana and her citizens were to live happily ever after, prosper on and on. my fellow ladies and gentlemen, you are right in taking a quick glance around you and asking yourself the question, where is the gold? It was natural for us to begin our discussion of our nation's natural resource potential with gold, because this commodity has for years, even after independence, remained a trademark of our sort, and is right there in our national flag, the yellow or the gold. Mining has continued to remain one of the country's major economic activities. Gold mining particularly continues to comprise about half of our total national exports. In the year 2019 onwards, we surpassed South Africa as the largest producer of gold in Africa. And in the entire world, we are ranked 6th nation, preceding us is bigger nations with large sizes, hence giving them an expected leg up when it comes to the chances of occurrences of these minerals. I mean, we're talking about countries like China, which is 40 times the size of Ghana. Russia, which is about 72 times larger than the size of Ghana. Australia, which is 32 times the size, larger than the size of Ghana. We're talking about the 4th and 5th, which is USA and Canada, and they are also about 42 times bigger than our country. Yet, coming 6th in gold production and export potential, we have this relatively tiny nation of ours, Ghana. I must reiterate, you have every right in asking the question, where is the gold?
And the worst part of it all is that we were taught right from schooling life up to from our primary school up to our tertiary school that Ghana has vast natural resource potential, far exceeding gold. It is famous for. We have manganese, we have bauxite, we have diamond reserves, and these minerals for years, like gold, has been mined in commercial quantities, among many others. And we are blessed with iron ore, lithium, kaolin, brown clays, mica, cows, socks, limestones, just to mention a few. Aside from minerals, there's also the issue of vast fertile lands all around us. We have timber, we have rosewoods, and to this, after decades of exploration, we struck oil in 2007. 4 years on, this country began producing fossil fuels in commercial quantities. Fast forward 23, we are producing somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 barrels a day. Increasingly, the country is itself competitive in crude oil production in the West African region and the rest of the continent. The cherry on top of it all, the country is blessed with youthful population like you. A population is young and full of life, eager and able to build, eager to be part of something great. In this continent of ours is estimated to be 70% of the sub-Saharan are all youth at the age of 30, and at 25 there's about 60%. So on its own, its wealth innumerable. A nation is only as good as its human resource prowess. And here we are, we have our country and continent blessed with youthful, energetic, and inventive minds such as yours, and yet look around. Where is the gold? Are you, as you're made to feel like blessing you? Are you given the opportunity to be at your very best? Every point of the way? Are you given the room to flourish and directly orchestrate in such vivid and influential terms the course of your nation's development journey? Do you see all this natural resource and human resource wealth in your country blessed with, translated into something around you? Maybe, just maybe, perhaps you are looking at the fact that you are presently sitting in a university and getting a higher education, or you are in a secondary school and you are getting education. Maybe you see few constructed roads here and there. Maybe you have hospitals in your community. Maybe you get portable water flowing through your taps.
Maybe intermittently you get electricity. Today is off, tomorrow is off. Sometimes you're off, sometimes you're on. But at the end of the day, you still get some electricity. Maybe you come to school and there are more than 5 of you sharing a tiny room. But you say to yourself, at least I have somewhere to lay my head or sleep. Maybe you look at around West Africa and you see there's a war-torn area and Ghana is oasis, is peaceful. So you can say, at least we have peace. Or you get some small funding to conduct some research work in a faculty every now and then. Granted, consequentially, that the research you are left to conduct are at times even outdated. Maybe you are hungry as you pursue your education because your mother and father or guardian at home is having a hard time in this nation's endemically harsh conditions and its inconsistent economic climate. But you say to yourself, at least I have something to eat yesterday night or this morning for that matter. Maybe you look at all this and say to yourself, but we are not doing so badly. Having been convinced by leaders upon leaders that this basic necessity of life being afforded you in tiny doses are great strides that you find yourself beginning to convince your own self that perhaps you are doing just fine. But let's see. If at the end of the day, you manage to make only 10,000 cedis from a 1 million investment, you do not go boasting in complacency. Especially if your colleagues manage to convert 100 cedis into a 1 million investment. A nation blessed with such potential as we cannot, at the end of the day, come out doing just fine. To whom much is given, much is indeed required. And here we are, our country Ghana, giving much, yet reaping piecemeals. Our situation becomes even tragic when we compare ourselves to other countries. Let's say Singapore, a nation technically barren, devoid of any form of competitive natural resource. A nation which attained its independence from colonial rule years after us. Yet, this country has managed to outpace us miles upon miles in the nationhood journey towards economic growth. It is shameful when you think about all these things and leaderships come to play. Here is why this conference, like this, to train and develop forward-thinking minds, comes to play. And I applaud the organizers of this program. There are books to teach you how to build a house, how to repair engines, how to write a book even. But I have not yet seen a book on how to build a nation. This is how the very first chapter of one of Lee Kuan Yew's autobiographical work begins. In this book, the former Prime Minister of the now developed nation of Singapore, by detailing how he led a nation from a third world country to a first world nation in this highly globalized, highly competitive world, offers the reader a solution to this very important issue. He brings it up. How does one build a successful nation? There are kinds of important questions. These are the kind of important questions that we should be asking ourselves as young people and leaders who are looking to take over a nation. How do we build a successful nation? This is not about politics or party politics. It's about having young people with creative, innovative mind, the courage and the boldness to speak and stand for integrity and truth, and to work to achieve something that will stay for longer and build their nation. Something that will lead posterity to judge you and judge you right. So I ask, where is the gold? Each and every day of our national lives, we must spend finding answers to these very important questions. We don't just take information. We need to critique it. We need to analyze it. We need to find out how beneficial we are getting from what we so-called have as enormous natural resources. And let's go right ahead and say it's mismanagement, it's endemic corruption, it's dishonesty, and can I never, or I repeat, never bring a nation to this point of self-actualization and development. Any nation that is so corrupt, that is so dishonest, that is mismanaging their affairs, can never come to that actualization. This is plain and simple fact that we have to realize at this stage of our lives. Away from these devious traits, he ended up building one of the most successful nations of our time. Even as relatively barren as his country was, with a tangible wither of a nation building, he was able to build this nation. So what happened to Singapore and what happened to Ghana? Anyone who is familiar with the history know that it came into being not as unorganically as other nations of the world have characteristically done. Singapore was not a natural country, but it was man-made, a trading post by the British, developed into a nodal point in their worldwide maritime empire. This is Lee Kuan Yew quoting, "We inherited the island without its hinterland, a heart without a body." Foreign press were making all sorts of analysis when they won independence. All predicted doom, adding to my gloom. One writer compared the Britain withdrawal from its colonies to the decline of the Roman Empire, where law and order collapsed as the Roman legions withdrew and barbarian hordes took over. Once again, I'm quoting directly from Lee Kuan Yew's book, From the Third World to the First World. So how does a 35-year-old man, leader, not a 45-year-old, not a 55-year-old, not a 65-year-old, not a 75-year-old, but a 35-year-old young leader in charge of a nation which has no competitive natural resource potential to speak of, a nation that was formed primarily to serve as an entry and exit point, became very successful? How does this leader effectively do this? Even faced with all these odds, even faced as his nation was with hostilities from his own neighbors and brothers. Let me remind you, the British during the imperial rule over the region strategically selected Singapore as a middleman or as a middle state so that they can bring all these raw materials from Indonesia and in Malaysia into the country. So when they had independence, the Malaysians, the Indonesians decided to process their own raw materials. They refused to bring the raw material to Singapore. So here's a country that didn't even have the raw material to start with. How did they develop? So ladies and gentlemen, lacking natural resources, potential, and now cut from the supply of raw materials from other nations, how does a country turn from nothing to something? How does such a nation manage to make greatness out of almost nothing at all? An independent Singapore was regarded not viable years ago. Nothing in the current situation suggests that it's viable today. Singapore's economy will collapse if the British bases costing £100 million sterling were closed. These are some of the quotes the press were writing about the nation. And yet, we're looking at a first-class country today. You and I can attest that they had every reason to be doubtful of the nation's success. There are other sides you have. There on the other side, you have Ghana, blessed with gold, cocoa, diamond, bauxite, manganese, arable land, oil and gas, vast human resources, was one of the most literate countries in the continent when it had independence. yet we presently are still comparatively poor and mediocre at best. The difference is leadership. How do we expect this tiny nation of Singapore, about 320 times smaller than ours, hence having little in terms of competitive natural resources, having a tiny human resource capital, a nation which imports everything, including something as fundamental as water they import. Late in their national journey, they had independence late after us. How do we expect such a nation to do any better? The difference again is leadership. Even as I say this, you know that we are wrong in this expectation of mediocrity and failures. We are wrong mathematically, expecting a faith of less than ours, a country such as Singapore, because here we were given 1 million Ghana cedis as a seed capital to start a business, and we've only made 10,000 out of it. In return, we reap meager 10,000. This is speaking metaphorically. I stand by the fact that we indeed right in equating natural resource potential with national wealth. It really does not make perfect sense for us to expect a country and other nations for that matter to flourish when these nations are blessed enormous natural resources within their borders. Should you find such natural resource rich nation faltering, ill performing in its nationhood journey, you have every right to be critical, especially when this nation is a nation or your motherland. Especially since you find yourself living in a world where other nations, not blessed with such resources and abundance, find themselves at the very top. This tiny nation, Singapore, is ranked the top 10 country when it comes to foreign exchange reserves. Is ranked the top 5 when it comes to GDP. In 2021, Wall Street Journal ranked it as the first of their index of economic freedom. It's been ranked the first as the most competitive country in the world. It is also in 2021 onwards placed for 7 consecutive years as a country which gives the most ease of doing business. It is ranked 10th when it comes to travel and tourism competitiveness. The list goes on and on. Literacy rate in the country stands at 98%. Singapore continues to have one of the world's most successful housing and living conditions. Looking at all this, we have absolutely no excuse whatsoever for these figures. Because worldwide, nations have proven that this fact to be true, that natural resource wealth of a country really does a lot to create successful nations. I mean, we all can attest to how quickly the UAE developed upon discovering oil. Since its discovery in the late 1950s, the production began in the 70s. This nation was able to quickly transform its economy from nomadic one to a world-class border nation. A nation with one of the highest standards of living in the world. A globally competitive and influential nation. We all bear witness to how directly this nation has been consistent, positively affecting socio-economic lives of citizens, utilizing natural resources. This is a country which has been so effectively managed its natural resources income that it makes no such demands for crashing tax revenue on its citizens. Having gained independence in December 1971, 14 years after Ghana did, the nation has been able to surpass us such unprecedented levels upon discovery of a single natural resources, that is crude oil. Yet, you and I find ourselves in this diversified, very resource-rich nation, yet consistently burdened with taxes upon taxes. Taxes that end up crippling our businesses, companies, entities that we have strived with our own sweat and blood to build. This nation of ours, having not efficiently managed its resources, to remain over-reliant on tax revenue for governance. We really have no excuse to be in this mess. So I ask, where is the gold? I'll tell you later. So yes, bad leadership. This is exactly why we are at this point in our national lives. Bad leadership, corruption, endemic lack of accountability. These are the evils that have kept us bound in poverty and mediocrity, even as we claim in our independence. These are the evils that has kept our people poor, unemployed, underpaid, overtaxed, their potential underutilized right here in this supposed nation of natural resource abundance. It is time we kept an unblinking eye, watchful eye over our leaders. It is time we demand religious accountability. That supposed leaders, accountability for all walks of national lives, right from government to private players. Accountability that completely wipes out the menace that is corruption in governance. One that wipes out the theft that is galamsey. One that wipes out the ridiculous economic management system that is over-reliance on raw materials exports. Perhaps we cannot hold ourselves accountable for the gold mining that happened in the Ghanaian soil since time immemorial, or 100 years ago for that matter. But what excuse do we have after 66 years of independence? Only recently built one gold refinery. In this highly competitive and global market, this natural resource, rich resource nation of ours has resigned itself as an exporter of raw materials. Raw materials of which we purchase at comparatively very low prices by the West, and then sold to us after it's been processed at a higher price. In answering his own question, an answer to over 1 billion Africans, Greg Mills did not mince his words. The reason why Africa and people are poor is because of the choices of our leaders. According to him, good development and examples abound in Asia and the Far East. But why then is Africa failed to realize its potential? It's not because of the world has denied us of the market. No. It's not because of aid per se. It's not because we don't have the infrastructure or intelligent people here.